Angelina Jolie's journey has long been marked by transformation, whether through her roles in cinema, her humanitarian work, or her personal life. But in this imagined narrative of her accepting Islam, one of the most profound chapters begins with a deep spiritual awakening. This isn't the kind of sudden dramatic shift that makes headlines overnight. It is a quiet, powerful evolution, a calling that begins from within and steadily reshapes how she views the world, her purpose, and her connection to something greater than herself. For years, Angelina has immersed herself in humanitarian work, often in war-torn, impoverished, and predominantly Muslim regions. From the refugee camps of Syria to remote villages in Afghanistan and Pakistan, she has sat with families who've lost everything and listened to stories of struggle, faith, and resilience. What began as advocacy slowly turned into a personal reflection. She witnessed the unwavering strength of mothers who had nothing but gratitude in their hearts, the calm dignity of men who had suffered yet prayed with peace, and the laughter of children who found joy despite their pain. These experiences planted the early seeds of curiosity in her heart. What is it about Islam that gives people such strength in adversity? Angelina is no stranger to introspection. Despite her fame, or perhaps because of it, she has often wrestled with questions about identity, legacy, and meaning. While others saw glamour and success, she carried the weight of emotional struggles, familial complexities, and the scars of past traumas. Slowly, her encounters with faith-filled individuals began to offer a new lens, one not focused on self-ego or public validation, but on submission, peace, and service. The principles of Islam, its emphasis on compassion, justice, self-discipline, and mindfulness of the Creator, began to resonate deeply. She did not arrive at her spiritual crossroads overnight. Her journey included extensive reading, private conversations with scholars, and countless hours spent alone in reflection. What touched her most were the teachings of unity in Islam, the idea that all humans are equal before God, that the measure of a person lies not in wealth or fame, but in character and righteousness. The simplicity and depth of Islamic prayer moved her. The act of standing, bowing, and prostrating 5 times a day, disconnecting from the world and reconnecting with the divine, was unlike anything she had experienced before. Angelina's awakening was not about rejecting her past, but about finding a more meaningful future. She began to notice changes in herself. Anger softened, fear subsided. The pressures of Hollywood and public perception began to matter less. In their place came an inner peace she had long yearned for. Her connection to God deepened, and for the first time, she felt truly grounded, not as a celebrity, a mother, or a humanitarian, but simply as a human being seeking closeness to her Creator. As she embraced this new chapter, she did so quietly and respectfully. There were no grand announcements, no publicity stunts, only a sincere shift in her values and actions. Those closest to her noticed the glow in her demeanor, the calm in her speech, and the intentionality in her life. Islam for her was not just a religion. It was a way of living, thinking, and being. It gave her the strength to let go of past guilt, the clarity to focus on what truly matters, and the courage to walk a path guided by faith. In this imagined yet powerful narrative, Angelina Jolie's spiritual awakening is not a story of sudden change, but of slow, meaningful transformation. A woman of the world finding her place in submission to something far greater than herself. Well, the moment whispers of Angelina Jolie's alleged conversion to Islam began to surface, the media erupted into a frenzy. Speculations quickly transformed into viral headlines, and what may have started as a private spiritual journey was suddenly thrust into the blinding spotlight of global attention. The story gripped the entertainment industry, flooded social media feeds, and ignited passionate debates across cultures and continents. It was as if the world paused to process the idea that one of Hollywood's most iconic figures, an actress, filmmaker, and humanitarian known for her fierce independence, might have taken a path so unexpected. The frenzy was not merely about religion. It was about identity, power, and symbolism. Angelina Jolie has long been a cultural force, her name synonymous with beauty, strength, and activism. For many, the idea that she could find truth in Islam, a religion often misunderstood and misrepresented in Western media, challenged deep-seated assumptions. Overnight, TV segments were dedicated to the topic. Talk shows speculated about what this would mean for her career. Journalists scrambled for quotes, trying to verify if the rumors were true, while paparazzi followed her every move, hoping to catch a symbolic gesture, a hijab, a prayer mat, an appearance at a mosque. Online platforms were flooded with reactions. Supporters of her rumored decision praised her bravery, calling it a bold stand against Islamophobia and a testament to her open-mindedness. Some described it as a beautiful evolution, rooted in years of witnessing suffering and resilience in Muslim-majority nations. Others, however, responded with confusion, skepticism, and even outrage. Some questioned her motives, accusing her of using religion for publicity or making a political statement. The digital world became a battlefield of opinions, dissecting every past quote, photograph, and public gesture through the lens of this supposed transformation. Media outlets from both the West and the Muslim world weighed in. Western tabloids focused on the shock factor, crafting sensationalist headlines. Angelina's religious U-turn, or from red carpet to Ramadan, Jolie's new life. In contrast, media from Muslim-majority countries viewed the development with cautious optimism, many hoping that her influence would help challenge stereotypes and bring more nuanced conversations about Islam into the mainstream. Some Islamic scholars called for calm and respect, reminding followers that faith is a personal journey and not a spectacle. Amid the chaos, Angelina maintained her signature poise. Whether she responded publicly or not, the way she carried herself became a message in itself. She neither denied nor confirmed the rumors immediately, allowing the world to speculate while she focused on her personal and professional responsibilities. Her silence, ironically, only fueled the fire. Journalists examined every humanitarian trip she had made, reanalyzed her speeches at the United Nations, and even brought up her children's backgrounds in search of clues. Meanwhile, Hollywood was unsure how to respond. Directors, producers, and colleagues began discussing whether this change, real or rumored, would affect casting decisions, audience reception, or brand partnerships. Some quietly distanced themselves, fearing backlash. Others stood in support, emphasizing a right to personal faith. The industry, often celebrated for diversity, found itself divided when faced with a form of diversity it rarely engages with on this level. What made the media frenzy so intense wasn't just the act of conversion, it was who she is. Angelina Jolie is not a typical celebrity. Her choices have always carried weight, often influencing global discourse. Her rumored acceptance of Islam didn't just touch headlines. It shook assumptions, challenged bias, and opened the door for deeper conversations about faith, fame, and identity. In the end, the media storm reflected society's discomfort and fascination with change, especially when it comes from someone the world thought it already knew. Whether true or not, the reaction to the rumor was a story in itself, revealing as much about us as it did about her. As Angelina Jolie quietly embraced her spiritual transformation, the changes in her lifestyle began to reflect a deeper shift in values and perspective. This wasn't a performative rebranding, nor was it a dramatic overhaul of her public image. Instead, it unfolded subtly, yet profoundly, as she aligned her daily habits, personal choices, and interactions with the principles she had come to embrace. The lifestyle transformation following her acceptance of Islam was both inward and outward. Known for her iconic fashion sense on red carpets and in films, Angelina began opting for more modest attire in her public appearances. The change wasn't abrupt or theatrical. It was elegant, thoughtful, and rooted in respect for her evolving beliefs. Long, flowing dresses, muted tones, and more covered silhouettes replaced the bold style she once wore. For some fans, it was surprising. For others, it was a beautiful expression of grace and intentionality. The media buzzed about the shift, but for Angelina, it was not about attention. It was about integrity. She wanted her outward appearance to reflect her growing sense of inner peace and spiritual responsibility. Her daily routine also began to shift in subtle but meaningful ways. She carved out time for prayer and reflection, building a rhythm into her life that allowed her to disconnect from worldly noise and reconnect with her faith. 5 times a day, she paused, sometimes at home, sometimes while traveling, and sometimes on humanitarian missions. These moments of stillness became anchors in her busy life, helping her stay centered amid the demands of work, parenting, and global advocacy. To her, Prayer was not a ritual of obligation, but a source of renewal and grounding, a space where she could be vulnerable and strengthened at once. Angelina's approach to diet and wellness also saw change. Guided by Islamic principles, she began to pay closer attention to what she consumed, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. Halal dietary practices became a part of her home, not imposed, but introduced with openness and education. Islamic. She encouraged healthy, mindful eating for her children, and discussions about gratitude and moderation became common at the family dinner table. It wasn't just about food. It was about consciousness, discipline, and gratitude for sustenance. Professionally, Angelina began to be more selective about her projects. While she never abandoned her artistic passions, she became more intentional with the roles she chose and the causes she supported. She gravitated toward work that aligned with values of justice, compassion, and dignity. Scripts that conflicted with her moral compass were politely turned down. Her humanitarian efforts also deepened in focus, supporting Muslim refugees, advocating for women's rights within cultural contexts, and promoting interfaith understanding. Even her interpersonal relationships began to evolve. Surrounded by people from diverse backgrounds, she made efforts to educate those closest to her about her new beliefs. These conversations were not about convincing others, but about sharing her journey with humility. She became a bridge in many ways between cultures, faiths, and worldviews. Which friends noticed a new sense of calm in her, a softened intensity that replaced the restlessness of earlier years. Parenting, always central to her life, took on a renewed significance. She began to raise her children with a broader understanding of faith, ethics, and spiritual identity. They were encouraged to ask questions, to seek truth, and to approach life with compassion. While she never imposed her beliefs, she gently exposed them to the values that now shaped her worldview: mercy, patience, service, and trust in God. Angelina's lifestyle transformation was not about losing herself. It was about finding her most authentic self. Islam, for her, became a lens through which life was viewed with deeper clarity and gratitude. Every change, whether in dress, routine, diet, or mindset, was a reflection of a heart that had found peace and submission, and a soul that sought to live with greater purpose and humility. When news, real or rumored, began to circulate about Angelina Jolie embracing Islam, the public reaction was as wide-ranging and emotionally charged one might expect. As one of the most recognizable figures in the world, any personal choice she makes has the potential to ripple across global discourse. But a religious transformation, particularly one involving Islam, triggered a response that went far beyond mere celebrity gossip. It sparked deep conversations, polarized opinions, and revealed the cultural sensitivities, biases, and hopes held by millions of people around the world. Among supporters, there was admiration and even celebration. Many saw her alleged acceptance of Islam as a bold and courageous step, especially considering the misconceptions and stigmas often associated with the religion in Western media. For Muslims around the world, the idea that someone as prominent and respected as Angelina could connect with Islam felt affirming. Social media platforms lit up with messages of welcome and encouragement. Hashtags trended, fan-made videos and artwork were shared, and public figures from Muslim communities praised her for having the courage to follow her heart in the face of immense scrutiny. They saw in her decision a bridge between worlds, a chance for broader acceptance and understanding of Islam. Others were more cautiously optimistic. Some people, including devout Muslims and interfaith advocates, urged patience and privacy, emphasizing that spiritual journeys are deeply personal. They warned against idolizing any individual's conversion, pointing out that sincerity, practice, and growth happen over time. For them, Angelina's journey, if true, should be met not with fanfare, but with gentle support and respect for her space to grow spiritually without overwhelming public pressure or expectation. But not all reactions were positive. In fact, a significant portion of the public expressed shock, confusion, or outright hostility. Critics questioned her motives, speculating whether the move was authentic or strategically motivated. Some dismissed it as a publicity stunt, while others interpreted it as a betrayal of her Western identity or feminist values. exposing the underlying prejudices and misunderstandings that still surround Islam in many parts of the world. Online comment sections, forums, and talk shows quickly became battlegrounds for ideological debate. Islamophobic rhetoric resurfaced, as did broader questions about freedom, culture, and religious influence in the public sphere. Mainstream media outlets struggled with how to frame the story. Some used sensational headlines, focusing on the shocking aspect of the alleged conversion, not feeding into the drama rather than seeking understanding. Others took a more measured tone, inviting scholars, religious leaders, and cultural analysts to discuss the significance of such a shift. But overall, the media's treatment of the topic mirrored the division within the public, ranging from respectful curiosity to overt sensationalism. Interestingly, many neutral observers, those without strong views on religion, found themselves simply intrigued. They were curious about what had inspired such a change in someone as accomplished and worldly as Angelina Jolie. They asked questions about Islam, not from a place of judgment, but from genuine interest. For some, her journey opened a door to learn more about a religion they had previously misunderstood or ignored. In this way, the reaction, even if chaotic at times, created a moment of reflection and dialogue. For her fans, particularly young women, Angelina's transformation prompted introspection. Many began to consider the role of faith in their own lives, realizing that even someone who seemingly had everything, fame, beauty, success, was still seeking something deeper. It made faith seem less like a rigid institution and more like a personal path of growth and meaning. In the end, the public reaction to Angelina Jolie's alleged acceptance of Islam was not just about her. It was a mirror revealing how society reacts to change, to difference, and to the idea that faith can transcend fame. It highlighted both the beauty and the barriers in our global conversation about religion, identity, and human connection. As Angelina Jolie's spiritual transformation unfolded, her connection to Islamic culture began to deepen in ways that felt both natural and purposeful. Having spent decades working in regions deeply rooted in Islamic traditions, such as the Middle East, North Africa, and parts of Asia, her understanding of these cultures was not superficial or tourist-like. It was built on years of direct engagement with communities, humanitarian missions, and real-life encounters with people who lived their faith daily. What once may have been a professional or empathetic connection grew into something more personal, meaningful, and spiritually aligned. Even before any indication of religious transformation, Angelina had demonstrated immense respect for the cultural practices of the people she served through her work with the United Nations and various charitable organizations. She was often seen wearing local dress out of respect, participating in community rituals, and engaging with local leaders on matters of cultural sensitivity. But after her acceptance of Islam, or at least the growing perception of it, her involvement with Islamic cultures took on a different depth. It was no longer just about respect, it was about connection, kinship, and a shared set of values. She began to speak more openly about the inspiration she drew from the strength, hospitality, and faith of the people she met in countries like Syria, Pakistan, Yemen, and Jordan. These weren't just political or humanitarian missions to her anymore. They were spiritual encounters. She often cited the dignity with which families held on to their faith despite unimaginable hardship. What touched her most was not only the resilience, but the grace and humility embedded in Islamic culture, particularly in how people viewed suffering, family, charity, and submission to God. One of the most noticeable aspects of this cultural connection was her growing appreciation for Islamic art, literature, and language. Reports suggested that she had begun studying Arabic and immersing herself in Islamic poetry and philosophy. The call to prayer, once just background ambiance during her travels, now stirred something deeply emotional in her. Islamic architecture, with its intricate geometry and spiritual symbolism, captured her imagination and inspired her aesthetic choices. Her home began to reflect subtle touches of this influence, not as decoration, but as reflections of a growing inner alignment. Her connection with Islamic culture also extended into the way she raised her children. Already known for embracing multiculturalism and instilling global awareness in her family, Angelina began incorporating elements of Islamic ethics and traditions in her home. This included teachings on compassion, honesty, generosity, and discipline, values shared across many faiths but emphasized uniquely in Islamic teachings. She exposed her children to Islamic holidays like Ramadan and Eid, not necessarily to convert, but to educate and broaden their worldview. She wanted them to understand that beauty and wisdom could be found in every culture, and that faith is something deeply personal, yet universally connective. Perhaps one of the most profound shifts was her evolving view of identity. Angelina, once a symbol of Western independence and rebellion, found solace in the humility and communal values emphasized in Islamic culture. In many interviews, she had long expressed her discomfort with fame and superficiality. Now, Islamic teachings on modesty, gratitude, and purpose gave her a framework to navigate those conflicts. The idea that one's worth lies not in external achievements, but in internal sincerity resonated with her. Through this lens, she found a more rooted sense of self, less defined by Hollywood and more by heart and faith. Her cultural connection also became a tool for bridge building. In a time of growing global division and misunderstanding about Islam, Angelina's respectful embrace of its culture helped shift conversations. She became an unintentional ambassador of sorts, not by preaching, but by living a life of quiet dignity and openness. Her actions reminded the world that understanding a culture doesn't require abandoning your own, but rather expanding it. In this imagined chapter of her life, her connection to Islamic culture didn't replace who she was. It deepened who she had always been becoming. When rumors began to circulate about Angelina Jolie embracing Islam, it wasn't just a personal transformation. It was a challenge that reverberated throughout Hollywood and the broader entertainment industry. Hollywood, a place often characterized by its secular liberal leanings and a highly commercialized view of fame, is not always the most welcoming environment for major shifts in identity, particularly those that involve religion. As someone who had been one of the biggest stars of the 21st century, Jolie's decision, whether public or private, prompted both overt and subtle reactions, some supportive and others less so. One of the most immediate challenges was the fear of alienation. Hollywood, for all its talk of inclusivity and diversity, has historically been a place where conformity, whether in image, ideology, or behavior, was often encouraged, especially for women in the public eye. For decades, the entertainment industry has promoted certain archetypes of femininity: glamorous, independent, rebellious, but not religiously conservative. The idea of a global superstar, especially one as influential as Angelina Jolie, adopting a faith that was often misrepresented in the Western media, posed an uncomfortable challenge. Would she still be able to maintain her relevance? Would her shift in personal beliefs alter her career prospects? In many ways, Hollywood's own complex relationship with religion was exposed. On one hand, the industry is known for promoting messages of empowerment, individualism, and self-expression. But on the other hand, faith, especially when it becomes publicly visible in a way that might not align with the secular norms of the industry, often becomes a point of contention. Religious symbolism, particularly when it pertains to Islam, has historically been met with skepticism or even outright hostility in certain Hollywood circles. Islam, often the subject of sensationalist headlines and stereotypes, was not an easy fit within the typical narratives of modern celebrity culture. For a star like Jolie, this created a subtle yet palpable pressure to balance her newfound spiritual identity with her career, public image, and relationships within the industry. There was also the challenge of navigating the public's perception of her authenticity. In a culture where religion is often politicized and where personal faith is scrutinized more than ever, the backlash was inevitable. Critics and pundits would likely ask if her conversion was genuine or simply a calculated move for personal gain, be it for career revitalization, attention, or to position herself as a more complex, multi-dimensional figure. The pressure to justify such a deeply personal transformation would be immense for anyone, let alone a high-profile figure like Jolie, who had spent much of her life advocating for global causes and trying to be a voice for the voiceless. Beyond the public scrutiny, there were the professional implications. Hollywood operates as a commercial industry, and the decisions made by a superstar like Jolie could significantly impact the box office, endorsements, and future projects. Would film studios hesitate to cast her in certain roles? Would her changing personal beliefs alter her ability to secure top roles or collaborate with the biggest names in Hollywood? In a competitive field where image plays a huge role, religious transformation might seem like a double-edged sword. On one hand, it could make her a more compassionate, grounded figure in the eyes of some. On the other hand, it could close doors with colleagues, directors, or brands that might not share her views or would prefer to avoid any controversy. Moreover, there was the challenge of balancing her role as a mother with her career in Hollywood. As a mother of several children, including adopted ones from Muslim-majority countries, Jolie was already deeply involved in cultural and interfaith work. How would her children be affected by her public transformation, particularly if it challenged norms within the entertainment industry or among her peers? There was also the potential for her children to become the subject of increased media scrutiny, which could create a pressure-filled environment for her family. Lastly, Angelina's decision to embrace Islam, whether perceived or actual, could impact her relationships within the Hollywood elite. Would colleagues, friends, and fellow actors be supportive of her decision, or would some distance themselves due to fear of backlash? Hollywood is a complex ecosystem of personal and professional relationships, and Jolie's choices may have sparked quiet tensions behind the scenes. Her previous work with diverse causes and organizations, particularly in humanitarian efforts and global activism, may have built a network of respect. But how would this new chapter influence her standing within an industry that thrives on individualism? Despite these challenges, it's worth noting that Hollywood has a long history of actors, directors, and public figures navigating personal transformations in the face of professional adversity. While embracing a religion like Islam might have presented challenges, it could also have opened doors for deeper storytelling, more nuanced character portrayals, and meaningful cultural conversations that Hollywood rarely engages with in an authentic way. Jolie's evolution could have offered an opportunity to challenge stereotypes, broaden Hollywood's understanding of spirituality, and introduce a new narrative about the intersection of faith, identity, and fame. But the road to that acceptance would undoubtedly be filled with obstacles, some subtle, some overt, as the industry reckoned with her personal journey in ways both seen and unseen.